Hello, my name is Sam Feltham and welcome to Expert Interviews here on Smash the Fat. We've got double trouble today. You just listened to, if you were watching or listening live, to Larry Diamond's How to Lose £100 in a Year, which is an amazing story. But we've also got another real food success story with us today, with Paul Blanchard, who is host of the Sugar Podcast. How are you doing, Paul?
I'm very well, Sam. Yourself?
Yeah, really good, really good. It's a nice sunny day here in London, isn't it?
Absolutely. Beautiful, beautiful.
Gorgeous. Cool. So, as I just mentioned there, you're the host of the Sugar Podcast, and people can check that out at sugarpodcast.org. Is that correct?
Yeah. That's correct, yes. I'm the co-host, in fact.
Yeah, there you go.
Aseem Malhotra co-host it with me.
Yeah, that's right. So, Dr. Aseem Malhotra, for those that don't know, is a Smash the Fat ambassador, and also obviously a cardiologist. That's his day job, and science director of Action on Sugar. So it's always good to kind of have such an academic and medical mind on board when you're kind of hosting these things, isn't it, Paul?
Absolutely. It's good to have evidence on our side, frankly, and that's why an alternative science, is it, or medicine. This is actually about changing people's lives for the better.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, how did you come to kind of co-host the Sugar Podcast? What sort of incentivized you to do that?
Well, like many people, I was a bit paunchy and a bit overweight, and was just trying to look at why, and I'd kind of fallen into that trap of it being about willpower. About, you just need to consume fewer calories and do a bit more exercise, and never quite getting the results I want. So I started to kind of look into it generally, and happened. In fact, I was my friend Alicia mentioned a book called Sugar Shock, Connie Bennett's book, and I bought that. And of course, it's not particularly evidence-based, but there was a clear movement there that sugar was a much bigger problem than people were letting on. And then I kind of Googled around YouTube, but like you do, and happened upon Robert Lustig's famous sugar lecture, the one with about 8 million views or whatever it is. Yeah. And kind of really got into it then. I read a book by Gary Taubes called Why We Get Fat, and kind of realised that it is just about the food that you eat. And if you eat bad foods, you're going to get fat. If you eat good foods, you can eat as much as you like of them. So I kind of did that, and then I kind of started tweeting about it and just kind of spreading the word, really. And because I work in media, I run a PR agency, I tend to know quite a bit of producers, editors, program planners, that kind of thing, and started doing a bit of media on it, not as an expert, because clearly I'm not, but just as someone who's given up sugar and seems to have done reasonably well for it. And I just happened... I think the Jeremy Vine show invited me on about 6 months ago to talk about sugar. And just by pure chance, they'd invited Dr. Aseem Malhotra on, who I'd never heard of and never met before. But we were sitting in the green room and we just chatted and became friends. And I realised that there was a space here that no one was actually producing a podcast on this, as in a kind of making the subject interesting and accessible. Talking about the evidence and how it, but also about, we're all human beings, and giving up is incredibly difficult. So I didn't want it to be a kind of patronising science-based show, as it were. I just wanted it to be kind of two people chatting about sugar, as if you would, a family hangout or, or down the pub, really. So that's what it is. It's an informal podcast that we do once a month, where we get a couple of interesting people around the table, one of which was your good self, of course, Sam. Recently.
Thanks very much. Yeah, absolutely enjoyed it very much.
Yeah, I did too. I thought that was a really good podcast, and that's really there's no real kind of master plan on that, really. It is what it is, and I enjoy doing it. It's good to keep in touch with all the people in the space as well.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's a really well produced podcast. It's not like this shoddy shambles of a show where we do it kind of online. It's all kind of face-to-face round the table. And in your last podcast, you had best-selling author from Australia, Sarah Wilson, talking about I Quit Sugar, her best-selling book in Australia, and hopefully in the next couple of weeks we're going to be getting her on the show here. So that should be good too.
She's brilliant. She's lovely in real life as well. She's everything you'd expect, really, because when someone like Sarah does such an incredibly personal book, you kind of, it's a bit, it'd be daft to kind of assume you didn't kind of want to, you feel you know them, as it were. You feel like you've got a connection with them, and it feels a bit odd, given that she's so personable. She's just as lovely as she's in real life, entirely as you'd expect her to be. So I'm sure you'll enjoy that.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm looking forward to it. But kind of going back to your story, how was it sort of giving up sugar? Because as you mentioned there, it is difficult. And yeah, we don't want to sort of patronize people and sort of like give people false hopes, even, because it's an incredibly addictive substance.
I wouldn't say it's difficult at all. I would say it's much worse. It was hell.
Yeah, there you go.
It's a living hell. I mean, I gave up drink about 3 or 4 years ago. I missed it at first. I realised I've got much more energy and feel a lot better, and that was quite difficult. Not impossible. But it's nothing compared to sugar. I mean, you know, every day, I don't know about you, Sam, but toward the end of the day, I kind of get a kind of little bit of a slump, kind of teensy bit feel sorry for myself, and I just think, I love a little boost. And of course, the old way of doing it would be to get a bar of chocolate or whatever, maybe a little coffee as well, and it really does pep you up. But of course, it's incredibly unhealthy, it's about avoiding those moments of temptation, really. But once you get into a positive habit, it's fine. I mean, the absence of sugar is amazing. You know, if I eat sugar tonight or this afternoon, I know that I won't sleep properly, that I'll wake up in the early hours of the morning with my heart racing. I get like a little kind of bit of extra around my skin, and if I put sugar, it goes. But, you know, I'm not science, but if I eat sugar, I break out in little red blotches on my face, and if I don't, I don't. So it's just a no-brainer, really. You just don't eat bad food, processed food, and you just feel a lot better. But I think the biggest for me is, I know if I ate sugar today, that tomorrow I feel just, I don't know what to call it, like brain fuzz. I just don't feel quite myself the next day. It's really odd. So there's so many reasons I don't eat sugar. Quite apart from the fact that, you know, as we discussed on the podcast, all the diseases can give you, like type 2 diabetes, morbid obesity, you know, hypertension, non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. There's just a litany of you eating bad food. You're going to see consequences in the long term. Also, in the I'd love to eat a bar of chocolate this afternoon. That's the big problem with it, of course, is it is, you know, buying that. And it'd be great, you know, if you have birthday cake in right now, I would love to eat half of it, and I would thoroughly enjoy myself for about 10 minutes. Then you get the come down. So it's just about kind of avoiding temptation in that moment, really.
Yeah, because obviously the short-term gain of sugar is a massive enjoyment at the time, and then you kind of regret it afterwards, and then it slowly but surely kind of gets worse as time goes on. You have the sugar hangover, which you kind of described there, and also you get the slump in the afternoon and things like that. But that's kind of the short-term things, and as you were alluding to there, there's a multitude of long-term health side effects that happens. It's implicated in type 2 diabetes, in obesity, even in cancer now, and everything like that. And it kind of seems like a no-brainer to try and reduce or avoid as much as possible sugar. But there are still skeptics out there. And why do you think that is?
Because it's new, isn't it? It's like it's the health fad, as it were. I mean, the irony is, of course, that the nutritionists got it wrong. They mislabeled fat as the killer, as the bad guy in diet. So you've got all this so-called healthy diet food, which has had all the fat food, which wasn't doing any harm. In order to kind of restore the taste, they applied it full of sugar. I mean, I had a hummus wrap last week in Starbucks, and that had 16 grams of sugar in it. And I was just thinking, but it's just absolute insanity levels. I mean, to be honest, I check everything. I naively assumed that wouldn't have any added sugar, and I won't ever do that again. But so they just pump it full of sugar, and of course now the evidence is catching up with people, and they realise that in fact sugar and carbs are causing the problem. So it's a big change. Like anything, it's like tobacco. It's like all of the kind of things we've had to give up. People deep down know that sugar isn't good for you. I mean, even as a kid, I knew it rotted your teeth, and My mum used to call orange squash loopy juice, because if you'd have loads of orange squash, you just go mental. So it's clearly, much more of a problem than people are letting on, and they're resistant. Our whole society on having a pudding as a treat or a bar of chocolate as a little kind of pick-me-up, or, everyone. I mean, look at Starbucks. I mean, I don't want to single them out because they're just like any other business, but look at the fact that people have muffins for breakfast. People are being convinced to eat cake for breakfast and think that that's normal. It's insane.
Literally.
So I think people are just catching up. That's all. And anything. I mean, clearly, Sam, you're doing excellent work with what you're doing. But the more the merrier. There's many routes up the mountain, and if I can be a piece in the jigsaw, so can you, and Aseem, and all that. Action on Sugar, all of these. But the more people shouting about this, the better, frankly. And I mean, I'll give you an example. I've been walking on about this with my family for ages. And my dad has suffered from migraines for years. I mean, for 20 years he's had chronic migraines. Wow. But he used to drink half a litre of orange juice, thinking that would count toward 2 of his 5 a day. Mm-hmm. He would have pudding. He'd have terrible trouble sleeping, and would have these front migraines. He genuinely tried everything. And then I said, well, why don't you try giving up sugar? And of course he was sceptical, and he had a bit of a Kit Kat habit as well.
Take a break.
Absolutely. But he quit it all cold turkey, and then for 2 or 3 days he still got his headaches. He thought, this is ridiculous. And then by about day 4 and 5, they all went. And he said it was unbelievable. Within about a week, he has had no migraines. I think he gets the odd migraine every so often.
Sure.
But he used to have them every day. Now he's done like once every 2 months. He doesn't have. He sleeps a lot better. So I just think. Clearly he's a massive convert now. I mean, I'm largely sugar-free, but occasionally I will fall off the wagon. I might have the odd cupcake here and there, maybe once a month. And to be honest, I do suffer for it, so I don't know why. I'm an idiot to do so, but my dad is very strict on it. He just says, why would I want to put something in my mouth that's going to make me feel terrible and give me health problems?
Yeah, absolutely. It's kind of making sure that when you do get those cravings, you try and talk to yourself about it and think, is this worth it, or is it not? And sometimes it is, because say if it's a birthday or something like that, somebody offers you a bit of cake, but it's just not for the everyday. It's kind of a once a month really type
Absolutely.
thing. That's kind of how it used to be. You'd go to a birthday party once a month and there'd be a cake or something like that, and you'd kind of have that piece of cake once a month or something like that, because it just wasn't really about. But now obviously it's everywhere.
It's everywhere, and it's not even. I mean, this is the thing. I've never been a conspiracy theorist. I don't believe there's some global conspiracy here. What it is chocolate bar manufacturers make chocolate bars and they put them in petrol stations and shops and so on and so forth.
People like them,
and people buy them, and it's no conspiracy. And if you go into a petrol station, for example, they sell what people want to buy, and if you're in a hurry and if you're on the move, you're going to buy crisps, sweets, sugary drinks. They're what sell. So this is capitalism, really. Yeah. I don't think a shopkeeper's evil, because of course you've got the choice, but it does affect your choice. I mean, the more sugar I eat, the more sugar I want, and it's really, really odd. So for me, total abstinence is the only thing that works.
Yeah, absolutely. And as a fellow teetotaler, probably the only 2 in London, right, Paul?
Yes. Yeah.
And it is that. Total abstinence is kind of the way to go, because it can turn into a vicious cycle and things for a lot of people. And it's not for everybody. Some people can literally control it. And it's fine, but for a lot of people, if they just have a little bit, then a little bit turns into a lot, and then it just snowballs from there and turns into sort of binge eating all the time. And I was talking to the chap that was on before you, Larry Diamond, about how he lost 100 pounds in a year, and he said for like the first month or 2 he still had sort of sugar cravings and cravings.
I've got one now. Genuinely, I'm fantasizing about chocolate right now.
Maybe we should stop talking about it. But he was sort of like still having cravings for carbohydrates basically. But then after 2 months of trying to not giving in so much, then the cravings just went away. And it's kind of the same with alcohol, really. I'm not preaching to people to go teetotal or anything, but after like a couple of months, it's just out of your mind. It's not part of your routine. And Sarah Wilson was talking about this on your last podcast. That it kind of takes around about 60 days to kind of get over this.
I internalise that I'm a teetotaler. It's part of who I am now, and I'm happy to talk about it. Because when I went teetotal, the one thing I promised myself, I thought I'll make one promise. I thought I will never become one of these annoying evangelical teetotalers because they annoyed me. But actually, within about a month or two, you end up doing that anyway, and you can't help it because it takes a month or so of alcohol abstinence to realise just how great you feel all the time. I mean, I used to think feeling not very good was normal, and it isn't normal. But trying to convince people that it's worth it. And it's the same with sugar, really. I mean, I'm totally abstinent with alcohol. I haven't touched it in nearly 4 years. But with sugar, as I say, I do allow myself, I don't beat myself up if I do have the odd thing. But I try not to. I also feel that it's just I'm going easy on myself. If I don't rule out the option that I could have a chocolate bar this afternoon. But I know I probably won't. But if I said you are not going to, I'd then end up. It's like if I tell you can't think of a white elephant right now, you can't ever think of it. You end up doing it. But I tell you one thing, Sam, that's really useful is what Aseem taught me, Dr. Malhotra. He taught me a technique because what people don't realise is how bad fruit juice is. I would have had apple juice and thought, well, that'll quench my sugar cravings, without realising that that's actually like 8 or 9 apples, right? But one technique that Aseem taught me is that if you get that sugar craving, is eat 3 apples. Because actually, no one ever does eat 3 apples. After about 2, you're full. And you don't want to eat the 3rd one because you're all appled out. But what it does do is it takes that little sugar craving out. And also, it's the equivalent of drinking like a quarter of a glass of apple juice. Whereas if it was juice, you'd knock back the whole glass before you even thought about it. But trying to chop through 3 apples is hell. The first one's nice, the second one's all right, and the 3rd one, we'll get about it. So that's what I'll do this afternoon if I get a sugar craving, is I'll buy a couple of apples and I'll eat them. Absolutely. And I'll eat them with an open mind, thinking if I still desperately want a chocolate bar after that, I'll have one. But you know what? Who could eat a chocolate bar after eating 3 apples?
Yeah, that's it. And I'm just trying to sort of realise that fruit juice is kind of just as bad as a sugary fizzy drink. It's kind of like an alien concept to people almost, isn't it? But you kind of got to realise that, is it in one small glass? I can hold up to the camera here, like a small glass like that. You can put 3 big Jaffa oranges in that. But as you just said there, you'd never eat 3 whole oranges. It's crazy because you'd stop probably 1.5 with oranges.
But even if you did, you'd have all the fibre in the actual fruit itself to mitigate the sugar's effect on the liver.
And that's where a lot of the vitamins and minerals are as well with the fruit. So you kind of lose that when it's in the juice.
But what's really interesting as well is, I mean, I've always eaten my sugar. I've never really drank it. But I would have fruit juice thinking it was healthy. But now I know about how unhealthy smoothies are and fruit juices. Is that this is really bizarre, but they don't quench my thirst anymore. It's like the thought of how unhealthy they are means that my mouth focuses on the kind of stickiness of in your mouth, and to be honest, that doesn't quench my thirst anymore, but used to completely. So the only thing that's changed is the way that I thought about it. So a lot of it is just the way you think. It's just changing patterns of thought.
Yeah, absolutely. And after a couple of months, then your behaviour has kind of completely changed. You don't really crave it quite as much. Another thing that's really interesting about you, not only are you a teetotaler and you've managed to give up sugar mostly.
Mostly. 95% work in progress.
Yeah, there you go. But, it's not about complete abstinence all the time. With sugar, you can sort of have it now and again. But with yourself, you're a vegan yourself. So that's a really interesting part about you. So what does your diet kind of look like daily?
Well, this is the problem with a lot of these high-protein, low-carb, low-sugar diet books and programs. Is they all say, "There you go, tuck into a burger. Here's a leg of chicken, and eat cheese."
But it's not particularly useful for yourself.
No. So I mean, I eat a lot of nuts. I eat a lot of I mean, I call it Quorn, but it's not Quorn because Quorn has egg in it. But it's like vegan versions of Quorn. You can get vegan burgers, meats. I mean, if you can, like, it used to call Redwood Foods now. Heather McCartney bought it. I forgot what it's called now. V-Bites, that's it.
Right.
You know, you can go online. You can basically get vegan versions of everything that you eat. So, you know, I eat burgers, I eat pasta, wholemeal pasta, etc., etc. So I just got to be clever, really. And luckily, although I'm a northerner, I do live in London and I work in Soho. So I mean, there's 5 or 6 veggie or vegan restaurants around here that I can go to. So I'm incredibly spoiled for choice. I imagine if I lived in, you know, a Sheffield suburb, I'd have to be quite careful. But no, I do have the luxury of choice here. But again, the risk of the veggie and vegan restaurants is I've got loads of delicious veggie and vegan puddings that I can be tempted by. And often being vegan, one of the biggest things to stop me eating, you know, whatever the pudding is that a restaurant has got in, is that it's full of cream or got egg in it or whatever, and therefore it's off the table completely. But if you're in a veg or vegan restaurant and there's 8 delicious puddings, all of which you can eat, that is quite a big temptation, actually.
Massively, massively, and of course, sugar is vegan friendly. So
tell me about it. I wish it wasn't.
Yeah, yeah. There you go. Because then it would be completely off the table. But yeah, it's kind of interesting. So yeah, thanks so much for your time today, Paul.
It's a pleasure, Sam, and thanks for what you're doing. I think what you're doing is fantastic with the Smash the Fat. I mean, you know, the programs that you're doing up and down the country, the advocacy. You know, you're a young guy, personable. You know, there'll be plenty of subjects that you could be passionate about in our society and speak up on, and it's great that you've chosen this. I mean, this is the way to make a difference. I'm quite proud. I think of all the things we're doing you're busy and so am I, but this is the thing that's really lives if we can give health, which effectively you stop eating bad stuff and you're going to become more healthy. And I think what you're doing is that, you know, as part of that team effort that we've got here to kind of convince people to live healthily, I think is fantastic. So thank you for what you're doing.
Thanks, Paul. I really appreciate that. I'd just highly recommend everybody to go check out the Sugar Podcast. You can check that out, sugarpodcast.org, or you can search for it on iTunes.
It's .org.uk, Sam. Come on.
Sorry, mate. Sorry.
Oh,
there we go. So sugarpodcast.
You and I through. This was over.
Get the website right, man. So yeah, sugarpodcast.org.uk. Be sure to check that out or search for it on iTunes, and you can follow Paul on Twitter at Paul W. Blanchard. Is it WR or W? Just W?
WR. WR Blanchard. And you can find the Sugar Podcast there online at sugar_podcast.
Perfect. I highly recommend everybody going to check that out. It's a great production, a lot better than this shamble of a show, as I said. But
I disagree wholeheartedly, and you're welcome back on it anytime, Sam, to do that.
Yeah, I'd love to, absolutely. So yeah, thanks again, Paul, for your time today, and I'll see you soon, mate.
All the very best to you.
Thanks a lot, Paul. Take care,
Sam.
mate. Bye.